Hi and welcome to the DownUnderDyer podcast. My name is Mel and I'm a knitter, dyer and cat lover living in Sydney, Australia. And this is my monthly podcast where I share all things fibre related. You can find me on Ravelry and Instagram under DownUnderDyer, and you can find my yarn on Etsy under DownUnderDyer. Okay, so to start with this week, I'd like to thank everyone who provided feedback on my last episode. It was my first ever podcast, and so as you might imagine, it wasn't perfect. So I have decided that going forward, I'll be adding closed captions to each episode, and I've improved the lighting and sound as well, so hopefully you notice the improvement. Last month on the podcast, I also mentioned that there'd be an Instagram competition giveaway. So I've drawn the giveaway winner, and it's Ling from Have a Yarn channel, and she won a pastel highlighter set, which I'll pop a picture up in the window now. So I've already sent that off, so obviously I can't share the yarn with you right now, although I think there still is one in my shop on Etsy. All right, so what am I drinking this week? I'm drinking Dilmah Berry Sensation. I kept the bag for you guys, so that's it, which is a black tea with a berry flavour. It smells really, really good. It actually reminds me of the smell of making jelly when I was a kid. But it doesn't taste how I expected it to smell. So I'm finding it's pretty good actually. It's just not as sweet as I was expecting it to be from the smell, but I guess you could just add some honey. And I'm using one of my really cute cat mugs, which is very on brand for me. I have a lot of cat mugs, unsurprisingly. It's been a while since I recorded the last podcast. It actually was more than a month ago, so I've gotten quite a lot of progress done on my knitting. But I've also had some problems in the last month with my cat. One of my cats has a kidney infection and kidney disease, and so I feel like in the last week or so I haven't really gotten much knitting done. I had to take her to the emergency room at 3 o'clock in the morning one night, and I took my knitting, but I was so nervous that I couldn't knit, which is unusual for me. Usually knitting is the response to, or my cure to my anxiety and nervousness, but you know, I was that anxious and upset that I was shaking, and I just couldn't do it. So it's been a lot of late nights. I've been keeping a close eye on her. And so I've been really just quite tired, and also I guess watching her means I'm not really focusing so much on my knitting, so I haven't been doing as much in the last week. But things are looking up. She seems to be on the improve, and she's eating her special prescription food, which the vet said will hopefully improve her the way she feels. And she's almost finished her course of antibiotics, so yay. And I'm recording from my office/studio, so my cats aren't here, but I will put a picture of her up in the screen now. Okay, so on to my knitting. So the first thing that I want to show you guys, I mentioned it last time, but now it's finally finished, and that is the skipping shawl. Look how gorgeous it turned out. So that gradient, isn't it beautiful? And if you look up close, you can see this beautiful detail of the slipped stitches. This yarn is Infinite Twist, and it's a Helix Giant Gradient in the colour Sorbet 2. And the pattern is by one of my friends, Kat, and she goes by Oliphant Cat on Ravelry. And I'll be sharing the link to the pattern once it is released. So the cool thing about this is it was all one ball of yarn, one really huge gradient, and as you can see, the color change sections are even throughout the ball. So it's designed to have a smaller section of pink, and then the largest section of the ball is yellow, so that it actually looks even in the project when it's finished, which I just thought was amazing. And it's a really lovely feeling yarn, and I had a really fun time. I found the pattern was, whilst complicated enough to look really nice. After a couple of rounds of the repeat, I had it down and I found it to be really methodical and enjoyable to knit. Yeah, so that's that one. And if you want to see pictures, I'll be sharing pictures on my Instagram when it's released. So follow me. Okay, the next thing that I have to finished object I have to show you is my moss and lichen socks. So I might just hold one up. So they're so cute. So these socks are using a yarn from Wendy Rome, actually 2 yarns. So one is called Bowness and one is called Dale. And they're from 2013. So this is actually the yarn that I bought when I first wanted to start knitting socks. And I don't know if I mentioned in the last podcast, but the very first sock that I knitted was too short for my feet. I think I must have just gotten a little bit impatient when knitting it, and I think I just stopped a little bit short in the desperation to get them off the needles. And because this first sock was too short, I just didn't know how to deal with it, so I kind of just popped it away in my knitting stash and didn't cast on the second sock. And finally this year, as part of my Make 9, I decided that I definitely need to get them finished and off the needles because it's such a beautiful yarn, as you can see. And I really wanted them. So I unraveled the whole sock actually and started over. And then I was actually really quick to knit the second one. The only thing I will say is, as you can see, they're different lengths. So I got a little bit distracted at some point when I was knitting. And so this one was, the second one here at the front was a little bit longer than the first one. I don't care. They fit. I tend to push my socks down so they're slouchy anyway, so it's like 0.5 centimetre. I don't think it's going to be noticeable when I'm wearing them at all. But it's very noticeable when they're on the sock blockers. So knitting fail. All right, and the third thing I have to finish, gosh, I feel so productive, is my ripple crop top, which is actually inside out. So let me just fix that up. And very excitingly, I have woven in all of the ends. There were quite a lot of ends to weave in, and I have blocked it. So I actually stretched it out a bit when blocking it, and I think I might go back and block it again, because at first when I tried it on, I thought I wanted to stretch out the ribbing and make it look like an oversized t-shirt. But then I tried it on again after doing that, and I don't think it's as flattering a fit as it was the first time around. So I think I'm going to redo it. And I'll just try it on now and show you what it looks like over my t-shirt. It's got a pretty deep v-neck. So one of the modifications that I made was I actually made the v-neck less deep, because I don't like to show that much cleavage. It's probably already going to be too much cleavage for me, but you know, let's just tuck these sleeves in so it's not so obvious. Obviously I wouldn't normally wear this over a t-shirt, although I think on one of my other pictures I have it over a little white blouse with a Peter Pan collar, and it actually looked quite cute, so I might do that. But probably it's more like a top that I would just wear in the summer over a pair of jeans, like a pair of high-waisted mom jeans. But yeah, as I said, I think I'm going to reblock that so that it's a bit more of a close fit, because I actually don't really like how the shoulders blocked out. I think they made my shoulders just look a lot wider than when I initially tried it on before blocking it. So yeah, live and learn. At least it's blocking, so it's a fairly easy thing to fix. But yeah, I'll update you on how that goes. Unfortunately, it's getting a bit cold in Sydney to wear this now, so I'm not sure. I might wear it as a layering piece, but I probably won't get much wear out of it until next spring now. All right, and then the last things I have to show you are some gauge swatches. So I knitted a gauge swatch. This one is a cat. And this is for a sweater that I'm planning on knitting later on. It's a couple of projects down in my queue, but I wasn't really sure what yarn to use, and I have just gotten this 16 ply undyed that I'm going to be dyeing for my shop, and so I thought I might give that a go. And so this is in a light mauve colorway, and I think it looks pretty good. The sample that I looked at was grey, and it's quite similar to grey. I just don't wear a lot of grey, so I decided to do mauve. Simple. And yeah, it's got a cat, which is very cute. It's kind of subtle, but not too subtle. Perfect for me. And then the other gauge swatch I have is a test of a test for a sweater that I'm knitting for my partner Dave. And he didn't really like any of the green colours that were available that we'd found in the shops, and so I decided that I was going to try over dyeing some Bendigo woolen mills. So this is over dyed on their 12 ply classic yarn, and I haven't come up, like, this is the colour that I'm going to be selling in my shop, but I haven't come up with a name for it yet, so if you have any suggestions I would love to hear them. But it's a beautiful kind of deep olivey grey, I get green, not grey, green colour. Yeah, and it's got some sort of flecks of dark, almost blacky brown sections. So it kind of looks khaki as well. Yeah, and so yeah, if you have any suggestions for what you think I should call that colour, I would love to hear them, because I'm coming up blank. Naming colorways is hard, people. But yeah, so that's all the finished objects I have to share for you. Although, you know, it's not a small number. I'm pretty proud of myself. Get out my works in progress. Okay, so the first thing that I cast on was a hat. Now this is called the Jaska hat. And it's basically a fisherman's rib hat. Fisherman's rib? It's not fisherman's rib though. It's just a twisted rib hat. But it looks like a fisherman's style hat. And that is again for my partner Dave. And again, it's in this gorgeous green color, which he seems to have taken a liking to. I didn't mention, because he just bought a cardigan yesterday in the exact same dark green that I was going to knit the sweater in. So he has decided to change the color. Which is good, because I haven't bought or dyed any yarn apart from just that test sample skein so far. So, but I think we're going to go with mustard instead. And so I might dye that, or I might buy that. We will see. There's a lot more mustard colours available on the market, and I think there's a really nice one in the Bendigo Woolen Mills rustic range, so I think we might go with that, but we'll see. Updates coming. But yes, so this hat, tiny little needles. They are, gosh, I can't remember, I think they're US size 1, yeah, 2.25 millimeter needles, and it's my soft sock, which is a 4 ply merino nylon blend, and it's going very slowly because they are very small stitches. I don't even usually knit my socks at 2.25 gauge. I usually go with 2.5. So I told him that this might be a next winter hat, or at least a late this winter hat. Although sometimes I knit pretty quickly, but I feel like I have put a lot of time into this, and it's like, there's like a little bit over an inch here, maybe 3 centimeters, 4 centimeters at most. It's going to take forever, guys. Yes. And so the other thing I wanted to mention about this pattern is it's not in English. So I was lucky enough to find someone who also knit this pattern who doesn't speak Finnish, which is the language that's available on Ravelry. And he was able to help me out a little bit with the translation. So I've purchased the pattern in Finnish, and I have notes in English on overwritten on the pattern, so I'm going from that. It's not too complicated a pattern though, so should all be good. I really liked it, so Okay, and then I cast on some vanilla socks because I tend to like to have a pair of vanilla socks to work on when I am doing other things and I can't give the knitting my full attention, like if I'm on a car trip or at the movies or something, particularly in dark locations where I can't really see. And so I'm knitting a pair of vanilla socks in my unicorn main colour. So it's this is on my sparkle sock base, and it's a light purple with just some bits of pink through it. It's really cute. It's actually looking a little bit darker on camera. And then I'm doing contrast heels in my night sky colour, which is a navy, which is over dyed over fluorescent speckles, and so it kind of looks like when you're looking up at the night sky and you might see like reflections of the city lights or stars in the distance. So, and that's on my everyday sock. Yeah, and I think that that's coming along quite nicely. I'm trying not to work on it, even though I kind of want to work on it. It's very potato chippy, just because I love the contrast colours. But I'm trying not to work on it and saving it for like situations where I need a really easy stocking it in the round project. So yeah, I probably won't finish that. Like I probably won't finish both of these socks anytime soon, just because I want to save them for that kind of project. Yeah, and I have made them not too long. I looked at what, usually I like to wear these kind of hand knitted socks that aren't ankle socks under my boots in winter, and I don't like them to sit too high over the end of the boots, over the top of the boots, and so most of my boots are like a little bit higher than ankles, so I try and make my socks about the same length so I can kind of just squish them down and they just peep up over the edge. Yeah. Although I'm also considering giving these away as a gift to my little sister, who hopefully won't be watching this podcast. Otherwise the surprise will be ruined, because I think that she would really like them. All right, more works in progress. Feels like a lot. I might show you this one later. So the other one that I have is the cliffside cardigan, which is a huge oversized cardigan, and it uses chunky yarn, but I'm holding my yarn double because my yarn wasn't quite chunky enough. And this is just using an acrylic yarn that I got from Spotlight, because I just wanted something that I could wear around the house while dyeing easily and chuck it in the washing machine and not have to worry too much about treating it nicely. So it knit up pretty quickly, and I've joined all the fronts, and I've even done the pockets. See? Pockets. And I was really proud of myself. And then I started knitting the sleeves, and they just didn't seem like the right size. And so this is the third attempt at the sleeves. So the first time I just did them flat and I was going to sew them in, but they didn't seem like they were big enough for the hole on the garment. So I decided to pick up the stitches around the sleeve directly and then work down. And the first time I did it, I decided to add stitches because I didn't think it was big enough. And it was huge and it was taking forever, and I was worried I was going to end up running out of my yarn. And so I ended up unraveling it all and casting on again. And it's not quite as oversized. So I'm actually just going off the pattern stitches now, and I'm just doing it in the round and picking up the stitches. And yeah, it's the same number as the pattern suggests. And it's not as oversized as I would have liked. Honestly, I probably would have liked it a bit bigger, but it's really stretchy. It'll be fine. It might even stretch out over time. I don't know. I'm actually knitting this to replace another one that I have, which is really similar, that I bought off ASOS many years ago. And it's acrylic, it's the same color, it's just a big oversized cardigan, and I almost wear it like a dressing gown around the house, and it sort of started looking really bad and falling apart, and I just decided it was time to replace it. So it'll be fine, essentially. I don't care that much because I'm not planning on wearing it out in public very often. It's just going to be my replacement house cardigan. Although I do like the shape, it's very versatile, so I might end up making myself a nice one out of proper wool to wear outside. Yeah, let's get this off the needles first, shall we? So yeah, the sleeve is taking a surprisingly long time, and it's really funny going from my Jasco, which is US 1 2.25 millimeter needles, to this one, which is let me see, US 15 or 10 millimeter needles. Is, look at the size of them. So I'm basically using the smallest set of ChiaoGus and the largest set of ChiaoGus that I own. And I did end up buying some extra yarn when I was doing the sleeves initially because I was freaking out that I was going to run out, but I managed to buy the wrong color. I don't know if you can see. So this is the color that I bought that doesn't quite match. And so yeah, you can, even on the camera, you can notice like it's a slightly more green tone to this one. It looks very similar, but it's not the same. But in the shop, I was like, yeah, of course that's the same. And then I got home and I was like, no, it's really not. So hopefully I won't need it. And I can turn it into something else, like a beanie or something. I could knit something for my nephews out of it because my sister would probably appreciate that they had, you know, a acrylic sweater that they can just chuck into the wash. I got 2 balls in that color and they're 100 grams, so they should I should make a sweater for a 3 or a 5-year-old, I reckon. Yeah. Okay, yeah, and the last thing is I have started a test gauge square in the round for a cardigan that I'm knitting. I haven't gotten very far. I started knitting it flat, which is the pattern is actually knit in flat in pieces. But it's a color, like it's a Fair Isle colorwork cardigan, and I do not like knitting Fair Isle purlwise. I might go as far as to say I dread it. And so when I bought the yarn and I bought the pattern, I thought that it was going to be knit in the round and then steeked, which is where you knit the cardigan in the round with an extra block of stitches in the center where you're going to cut down for the cardigan. And then yeah, you go in and you reinforce the stitches and then you cut the cardigan up the middle and then you fold them back and stitch them down to secure them. There are lots of different methods, but that's essentially the process that you would go through. So I thought that was what this cardigan, the construction method of this cardigan, and then when I realized it was knit in the flat, I gave it a go, but I really wasn't enjoying it, and I couldn't see myself making an entire cardigan and just hating, for lack of a better word, every second row of it. And so I decided that I'm going to convert it to a steeked pattern. And so this is my test square that I'm going to steek. And I'm using, I accidentally, one of the balls of yarn that I got in the wrong color. So I managed to get the right color. So I'm just using this one because I'm going to be doing such a big gauge swatch. I decided not to. Also because I'm steeking, I'll probably use a bit more yarn than the pattern called for. And so I didn't want to use the colors that I was going to use for the pattern in case I ran out. So I was a bit worried as well. I decided to buy more of this base color because I thought I might need more given the change in construction of the cardigan, and I bought it a year ago, so I was mildly concerned that I wasn't going to be able to get a matching, I was basically certain that I wasn't going to be able to get a matching dye lot, and I thought, I was questioning how difficult it would be, like how obvious it would be, because I know sometimes manufacturers can have quite a big difference and other manufacturers it's fairly noticeable, and it's a fairly fuzzy, hairy yarn, and it is in colorwork, so I kind of just accepted that they wouldn't match and bought 2 balls anyway. But lo and behold, even though I bought them from a different shop, they were the same dye lot. So that was an amazing turn of fate. And I brought the pattern book along today to show you the cardigan that I am knitting, because I want to show you why I'm going to so much trouble, because it is so gorgeous. It's called the Turi, and yeah, this is really cute. It's got rabbits and mushrooms, guys. Rabbits and mushrooms. How can I not knit that? So it's going to be worth it in the end. It's probably going to be my big project for the next 12 months. Yes. Anyway, so that's all of my works in progress, knitting wise. I have been doing some other things. I've been doing some weaving and some spinning as well. So I've been spinning some yarn using that I dyed using avocado peels and pits. So this is the yarn. It's a really, I dyed a bunch of yarn for my shop in this color, and then the water was still quite bright in color, and so I decided that I'd dye a bit more of I just decided to dye the fiber that I'd bought for my to test out my e-spinner with. And so yeah, it's this really, you can tell it's off-white. It's a very, very light pastel pink. And this is the first ball that I came up with, and it's I worked it out, it's probably about Aran weight, although it isn't super consistent. There are some smaller sections and thicker sections. And this is my first gauge square. So yeah, I think I could have knit it on a smaller needle, to be honest. It's kind of gappy. I haven't blocked it either, but I did already wash the yarn to set it. So yeah, and it's really nice. I think it's I don't think this is merino fiber. I think it's Corriedale fiber. I bought just the natural white color from Ashford when I was buying my drop spindle, but I never ended up doing anything with the drop spindle because turns out I don't like using a drop spindle very much. So I ended up upgrading myself to a electric eel wheel nano e-spinner, which is a really cheap, tiny little e-spinner, which I will show on the podcast in a future episode. But they only cost about $100 and shipping is really very reasonable as well. So I decided to give spinning a go on the e-spinner because I thought that might suit me better. And it has. I'm enjoying it much, much more, and I am getting a bit bored with just spinning one colour, and I have some really exciting things which I've shown you in past episodes in my stash, but I really need to finish spinning my first yarn before I pick up other things. And I don't really have anything in mind for this. It might end up going into a weaving project. So that brings me to the next thing, which is, while I was on holidays in Tassie, I also bought a weaving loom because I've been wanting to try it out, and I thought it might be a good way to use up some spare waste yarn, and I thought it might be a fun way to decorate my walls. And I noticed that this room has a bit of an echo to it, and some suggestions were to put hangings on the walls to try and stop the echo so much, and so I thought wall hangings, weavings, that could be good. So this is my first weave. It's fun. It's all either undyed or dyed by me yarns, and yeah, I did this in about a day. I watched a couple of tutorial videos which I'll link in the show notes. They're all freely available online, and I just decided to give it a go for fun. I haven't quite finished it yet. I've got a little bit more to go before I tie it all off and hang it up. But I'm looking forward to getting that finished at some point when life calms down a little bit. So what else do I have to talk about today? I think that's it, actually. So I've been going for 30 minutes, so it's probably enough content to share with you anyway. So on to my shop updates, if you'd like to stick around. So as I mentioned before, my yarn is available on Etsy under DownUnderDyer. And there's a link in my profile to that too. And these, what I'm going to share with you now, will be available in my next shop update, which will be on Monday night at 5 p.m. So that's Monday the 26th of April at 5 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, which is GMT plus 10. Yeah, so now I need to take all this stuff out of my basket. And this is probably my newest stash acquisition, which is a knitting basket. I picked this up from a store local to me called The Happen Store, and it's an individually handwoven basket from Myanmar. And yeah, I saw it, and it's so big and chunky. It fits so much in it, and I love the colors pink and green. They're basically my combination of choice. So when I saw this basket in the store, I thought I must have it. They had a whole lot of different colors, and they still had a bunch in stock. So if you're in Sydney and you're local to the inner west, check out Happen Store. That's also where I go to my knit nights. Well, craft nights, but I do knitting at craft night. Anyway, that was a bit of a segue. So let's get back onto what I was going to talk about, which is my store update and the yarn that I'm going to have available. Okay, sorry about that. It was getting quite cold, as you can see. It's getting a bit darker because the sun's going down. Yay, winter. And so I had to put my cardigan on. But yeah, let's get into what's in this shop update this week. So I'm going to have a couple of mini skein sampler sets. So these are all unrepeatable colorways, and they use usually like leftover yarn, leftover dye, where I don't know how much dye is in there. It might be because I've rinsed out some bottles, or I've had a spill, or not all the dye solution was taken up in the yarn that I was dyeing. And so they're not repeatable because they're not measured out very well. But they come up with very nice colors, and they're really cute, and I hate throwing dye away. So yeah, I keep a bunch of these 20-gram mini skeins around so that I can use up that dye, and then I sell these at a special sampler price on my website or on Etsy. So yeah, I'll have photos of all of them so you can check them out, but they are cute. And then I'm going to have the night sky color way on my soft sock. So I showed you what that looked like knitted up in that sample sock that I was knitting before, and I'll have a couple of skeins of that. I've got one skein of this unnamed green, and that's on my soft sock as well. And then I have, this is my 4-ply merino, 4-ply 100% merino base, and this is the vintage tea set colorway. So it's a very light kind of beige color with speckles of burgundies and sepias and browns. Really quite cute. So there'll be I think there's 3 or 4 of them in the shop. And then there's also, I don't have Marvelous to show you, but Marvelous is a new color I'm working on, and it is a mauve with speckles of deeper purples, and it will be in the shop on a couple of different bases. And I'll have, I think I've got, I don't know, it'll be in the shop on a couple of different bases though. And then I have my Magnolia Fade Set collars in 100-gram skeins. So you can buy them separately. I'm not going to put them in the shop as a bundle, I don't think. Although I'd love to hear your feedback on that in the comments. And so that is the light Magnolia color, which is a cream yarn base with speckles of a magenta, yellow and brown. Yeah. And then there is the Magnolia variegated colorway, which is a tonal like light magenta pink color. And so there are darker and lighter sections. So that knits up beautifully. And then there is the light Magnolia, there is the Magnolia speckle, which is the same as the color that I just showed you, but with speckles in this, the yellows and the magentas and the browns again. And then there's the deep magnolia, which is again a tonal variegated. It's a deeper color than the other one, without any speckles. And so together they make up a cute fade combination. And so I actually kind of want to keep a set of these for myself to knit a sweater, the Le Pouf sweater, but I might or might not do that. I'm also going to have mini sets of these in the shop, which means that you'll get 4 25-gram skeins too, so 100 grams in total in one of each of those colorways. So potentially you could, if you needed to make a sweater and you needed more than 400 grams of fingering weight or 4-ply weight yarn, you could put them together and you would hopefully have enough to make a sweater with 500 grams, or you could get 2 and have 600 grams. You can do the math. Yes, so that's everything. Oh, and then there'll also be a few single or 2 skeins in a couple of other colors that I've dyed up recently, and then there is still some stock available from my previous shop update. So yeah, that's everything, and yeah, look out for that update on Monday afternoon. So I am also taking custom orders, so if you're interested in a custom quantity of any of the colors that I've shown you today, I can do custom amounts, and that includes the mini sets and the larger sets. Just send me a message on Instagram or Etsy, and I can work out, I can discuss your needs with you. So that's all the content I have for you today. If you have made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And please don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast to get updates about future episodes. If you have any comments or questions, I'd love to hear from you, so please do comment below. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you all next time.